Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And patch 12.1 is around the corner. Many players are speculating that the next patch will release on August 11th, and then likely Season 2 will start the following week. However, this has not been officially announced. I kind of anticipate that the date will be officially announced today, but I wanted to make a video regarding patch 12.1 and basically my prediction in terms of the power and potency of the specializations, because there's a huge amount of changes coming through, like massive amounts of changes. I have all of the changes basically here on this side monitor, just so that in case I forgot something, I'm going to be able to kind of quickly tab back over and see exactly what's gone over, because it's literally like a university level thesis as far as like overall changes and what kind of impacts and collateral damage could possibly be caused by such changes to consider for a prediction tier list like this. This is a prediction one, so I'm going to do my best to be as accurate as I can, and then when the patch actually releases and we get our hands on it officially in live form, then I will update this tier list as things move forward. So don't worry, this isn't going to be the final one, as you would normally not have to worry on my channel, since you guys pretty much only watch me for the tier list at this point. But let's get started here. We've got Affliction Warlock as the first specialization. Now, the biggest things benefiting Affliction Warlock are the changes in philosophy towards game pacing. They are increasing stamina by a significant margin. This is to reduce the likelihood of getting one shot. And if you are unable to get one shot, likely game durations will increase. And as game durations increase, Affliction Warlock does a lot better. It also scales really well with stamina increasing effects. Things like its Dark Pact, and most of its passive healing, its Hellstones, all function around percentage-based healing. So I think that this will likely put it in a very strong position. I think it already is currently in a strong position, at least when it comes to solo PvP and possibly even rated PvP. I feel like Affliction in the current patch is getting better and better. And I do think that it's likely going to just continue to get better. And I'm trying to remember if they did any specific tuning changes to Affliction or not, like some kind of hero tree rebalancing. I don't remember them doing that. I know its set bonus is ping pong between being like really OP with instant Seed of Corruption and many other types of effects. But I basically think the only thing really that you're going to notice that will feel like a bit of a nerf is that they are nerfing your snares, but they're nerfing everyone's snares. Although yours was a pretty strong one with Curse of Exhaustion. It was very, 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 very strong slow. But I think aside from that, your main benefits are just that everybody else is getting weaker. You know, Rogue Mage is getting weaker, and you're just going to be passively more tanky. So I kind of expect Affliction to do really well. I think that I've also noted that in PvE, from observing some content creators over there, and it's important to observe that because it can impact us as PvP, is that a lot of dot classes are actually really good. So I do think that will likely translate at least somewhat into PvP, and we might actually finally get a dot meta, which, I mean, hasn't happened for like 10 plus years or something like that since getting a dot meta. So I'm pretty confident in putting Affliction higher up on this. I think its kit is really good, although you will be hit by the diminishing return changes as well, which is to say that once you fear someone, you're going to have to wait 20 seconds now to fear them full duration again rather than 16, so you have to wait 4 extra seconds. And this does affect things like Howl of Terror, because it's such a low cooldown. You'll be impacted even more significantly with being able to land AoE fears, but I don't think it's a huge thing. Melee DPS are probably going to be a lot better because of nerfs to mages and nerfs to snares in particular. So maybe that has some impact on you. But I think it'll still be very, very good. Arcane Mage, I've seen a lot of positive feedback towards this specialization. It was one that wasn't really received particularly well at the beginning of the expansion, and they've gone in and reworked it and retuned things and created more build options, is my understanding for Arcane. And the best thing for you is that they're just nerfing Frost. And the biggest things to Frost is that it looks like, at least at the moment when I was on the PTR, is that you don't have 2 ice barriers anymore. So they nerfed Overpowered Barrier, which is the amount that the barrier absorbs, and it looks like you don't have 2 of them. So Frost is losing a tremendous amount of durability. You're getting more build variety. Arcane, in the past I would have said would be doing really well also into melee, but it seems like not so much. They've toned down its mobility a lot compared to the War Within or Dragonflight, but I kind of expect Arcane to be pretty decent. I'm going to go middle of the pack just because it's pretty bottom tier in this current season, so overshooting this one I think might be a bit of a mistake, and I think maybe Mage might not actually be the meta for once in a very long time, but I think it'll probably feel more like mid-ground. Especially, it should feel like an improvement from where you were last season. I just don't know if it's going to be this major meta defining specialization. Arms Warrior, you are so happy about this one because Frost Mage, if Frost Mage disappears, oh buddy, you are a happy camper. I think Arms will likely still be in a really good position. I'm putting it in A+, and the only reason I'm not putting it into S is its defense. I think its defense in the current patch, which isn't changing moving into the next patch, is kind of its only drawback, but you're going to be getting a lot more mobility because of the changes to snares. So you will feel that likely significantly. You do benefit from the percentage-based healing as well a bit with things like your Victory Rush. So that's nice there. I don't think there's too much changing as far as your damage profile. So I expect that your damage will be pretty much in the same spot. I think defense is just the kind of the main thing that's preventing me from moving it too far up on the tier list. Assassination Rogue is receiving a lot of quality of life changes as well towards its energy regeneration. They responded to that feedback with regards to it, so Assassination should feel even better than it did in the last one. Again, I think its defense is its main lacking point. DR changes not going to impact you likely as much as subtlety, because subtlety actually can stun someone every single time the DR was over for 60 seconds, whereas assassination its vanishes are much longer cooldown, so you're not getting like double garrotes too frequently, or you could at the beginning of a match and then not have any vanishes for the rest of the match, which would not be particularly great. Although at the same time, I do think these specs that are kind of like burst-based assassins might not be as good depending on the pacing of the game. Its defense might not be strong enough to get into the deep damping, but at the same time, it's got great synergy with things like Affliction. So I think middle ground here is probably a safer bet with Assassination. Augmentation, I still don't see them making any changes to the pain points with maintaining Ebon Might in PvP, which is when you cast Ebon Might, you have to spam Eruption to keep it up and other spells to keep it up. But if you get CC'd, it pretty much falls off almost immediately. You're negatively impacted by the DR changes because you can't spam Sleepwalk as frequently. My expectation is that Aug is probably still going to feel pretty low tier, kind of just that niche spec that you pick up and try to make it work, but it's not going to be too fantastic. A lot of the tank specs are actually getting buffs. I think Blood DK, I believe, is one of them. It's getting a lot more attention as the patch gets closer to the release date. It's got a really good baseline kit for like Battlegrounds and stuff like that with Death Grip and Chains of Ice. Although Chains of Ice is getting nerfed, so maybe you're going to actually lose out on that. If Chains of Ice isn't that strong, that's the main reason to bring you. Mind you, you just bring Unholy and you get the same thing, right? Or Frost even, so... Blood DK maybe here's better spot. I don't know, because its damage output could actually be pretty high. I'm going to leave it more towards the mid ground here. Guardian Druid I still think is going to be really good. Again, most of the tanks are getting buffs, and this happened last season as well, where they were getting buffs for PvE and there wasn't any PvP modifications on those buffs, and then the tanks started popping up and then they caught them a little later. I kind of feel like the tanks are sort of following in that trend once again. The main reason I think Guardian Druid is likely still going to be remaining near the top is just it's got great crowd control, great brawling, great spinning, great flag carrying potential, just well-rounded, basically more well-rounded than Blood DK. It's got the mobility aspect, which I think is a huge advantage for it at the moment, and it scales really well with the percentage-based healing. Mind you, most of the tanks do, as they do have some type of percent-based heal mechanic. Beast Mastery Hunter I think is still going to remain very powerful. It's just a high sustain damage spec, which is kind of where you want to be with the current patch, although it's going to be a little bit of randomness, a little bit of volatility would be my expectation, especially in the initial stages, that we will likely see PvP changes rolling out like week to week to week, although raid tuning usually is their main priority. However, given that BlizzCon is so close by, if the patch does come out prior to that, as we're expecting, they're probably going to want to make sure the dungeon balance and the PvP balance is as good as it can be for that showcase. But my estimation with Beastmastery is that it's probably still going to be really strong. It just has very powerful sustain. The DR change is not going to impact you because your crowd control is longer cooldown than the actual DR itself. Although at the same time, if Mage is less prevalent and you do really well in a Mage, maybe not, but I'm still pretty confident it's going to be riding up here. Brewmaster I think is actually pretty solid. Remember, this tier list goes from like top to bottom, left to right. You should only compare rolls against each other, so melee against melee, range against range, and healer against healer, tank against tank. It's impossible to compare an Afflock to a Blood DK as far as your viability. Just don't try to do that. But Brewmaster I think it's gonna have good brawling capabilities. It's got knockbacks with a backflip kick, which can be good on some maps in some situations. Like okay mobility, I really don't see a lot of them as flag carriers, if ever. I really just don't see it a lot, and I don't know if it has anything particularly really OP about it that's going to cause people to jump onto it. So it's probably just kind of safer to ride the mid-level rating here. Feral Druid, you will likely feel some of the DR changes, at least with Cyclone. Mind you are more sustained damage oriented than previously, which is probably going to be good for you. I don't know where to put this. You kind of weaken a Rogue, but Rogue is getting nerfed. I feel like Feral's got to be at least somewhere in the A+. It's still harder to play. I've noticed from my most recent playthrough with it. I just completed Elite plus rating on every single spec in the game, actually, for Solo Shuffle. And with Feral Druid, there's this weird moment where your Tiger's Fury is like 10 seconds to coming off cooldown, but your bleeds are running out, and you don't know if you should refresh them or if you should wait. There's just a weird moment there that makes it really complicated as far as your decision making, and it's just weird. Like the snapshotting, it makes it feel unique, but there's a weird moment when you're coming to the reset of it where you're just like, I don't know if I should keep bleeds up or not, which feels bad. It's harder to pull off the maximum effectiveness with it. So if you're a new player, it might be a bit more challenging, but I think in a sustain oriented meta that Feral would still do really well. Given the kit that it's got. Boomkin I kind of expect to be a lot better. Its damage profile looks really good at the moment. It gave them Dispel Protection. Frenzied Regen healing is going to scale well with the percentage-based healing. Good mobility, that's another thing. I think it's going to be one of the few range that doesn't feel the negative impacts of the snare removal as much, because it can just spam shapeshift so much with Tireless Pursuit. So I'm kind of going a bit higher with this one. I don't know if I want to go on to S or not. It could easily be S. So somewhere between A+ and S, but I'm leaving it on A+ for now. Again, being a bit hesitant with it because of where it currently sits with a lot of these other specializations. Devourer, Demon Hunter, again, I don't think we're seeing any more survivability reductions to them, particularly. I think it's mostly just going to be the same. Actually, they keep buffing their damage is what I remember noticing throughout all these patch changes. There's more and more damage. So I feel like you guys probably going to be the only spec that's still one-shots people, if I had to guess. So you know what? I'm saying this probably should be like the God spec, actually, for the duels that I remember with it. Maybe it should be the God spec. I think Devourer is going to be very strong. Demonology, unfortunately, I don't think you're getting really anything. I think actually some of your stuff is getting nerfed, mostly because of Mythic Plus, is my understanding for it. But it's definitely not. I don't remember seeing anything for Demo where I was like, oh my god, Demo is gonna pop off and it's gonna absolutely farm everybody. And I'm just scrolling through here to make sure that it's not. But I'm like 99% sure Demo might be just kind of sag. Yeah, they nerfed one of your hero talent builds, which wasn't even the hero talent build that most people were playing. I don't think Demo is the spec to go for, unfortunately. I still don't think you're probably as bad as Og, but Demo's definitely going to be riding, I think, more towards the bottom. Destruction, I don't think is going to end up being too fantastic, just because it's kind of more burst oriented, and if burst isn't the desirable output of damage, then you might struggle with that, especially if Affliction or Shamans are a lot more viable, and it is possible for Shamans and Afflictions and Warriors and things like that to be more viable, and Melee in general to be more viable. I think it's probably safer to ride somewhere in here with Arcane Mage, maybe even down with Demonology, but going a little bit more of the middle of the pack with this one. Devastation Evoker. Evoker in general, I believe, is having its hover mechanic change, so you're actually going to be snareable. So this could be completely devastating to Devastation Evoker. It could be completely devastating to Preservation Evoker, and as well as Og. So maybe there's another reason to put Og down there. I think Dev might feel significantly weaker as a result of this. It really depends on if you're able to actually get away from melee, or if it really matters if you're able to get away from them, depending on the pacing of the game. But maybe I'm taking like a shot here, but I'm going a bit. It's a bit of a riskier pick, I think. It really depends on how hover. It's basically becoming like Ghost Wolf, where you can't be brought below 100. But before, I think it was just removes everything and you move faster, so you are going to be losing quite a bit of speed there. And then melee are obviously moving faster because their snares aren't as effective, and that was your huge advantage really against a lot of melee. So it might feel significantly weaker. Disciplined Priest is a weird one because they keep changing it for PvE, and they keep going after Void Shield, and Void Shield's really good in PvP, so if they keep going after it, you might struggle. But I feel like you're still going to be really solid. I think it's like you're probably at least A+. I'm going a little more conservative. I think it's probably still going to be A+ if I had to guess. Maybe mana is a problem depending on duration of match, but if it ends up being some type of AF wizard stuff, you could still do really well, I think, as Void Weaver. Ellie is a hard one, man. I don't know where to put Ellie because they've been targeting all of its burst cooldowns, lowering its one-shots, and I don't know how it's going to feel when that's all said and done. This is like my biggest concern with it. I feel like it's probably safer to say that it's somewhere in here with like Arcane Industro, and but maybe like I could see this one swinging down a lot or up a lot. So this one I'm open to being like totally wrong about at the moment as far as predictions are concerned, because I don't know where to go with it. As far as cooldown pressure, Enhanced with Shaman I think is still going to do really well. It benefits significantly from the snare removals and Frost Mage receiving such sizable nerfs. I think it's still going to be very good there. I think it's probably like an A+ feel for that one. Frost DK, this is a tough one because you keep getting nerfed for Mythic Plus, and it seems like, you know, they went after the cooldown builds for Ellie, but Frost is still going to be kind of like this Giga one-shot spec. So it really just depends on if you can actually one-shot or not. Withstand. If you can't, I feel like you're not going to be good. So I'm going a little bit lower with this one, unless we see tuning towards its cooldown power coming down and damage outside of its cooldowns going up. I think if it ends up being a one-shot spec and stamina is really high and it can't, it's not going to be as competitive as some of the other options. Fire Mage, I believe Fire Mage is actually getting some damage buffs and maybe some defensive buffs as well. I don't think it's going to move too much, though, if I had to guess. And honestly, being like burst based, you're affected by the DRs negatively. The overpowered barrier nerfs, I believe, are also affecting you, as well as the other mage specializations. So I feel like it could be tough to be a mage this patch. I think I'm going like here, might be even lower. I think this could be a rough mage patch, which hasn't happened in a very long time. Frost Mage, same type of deal. I think with the snare nerfs, no more double barrier. The blink stun is still really good, but stuns aren't going to be nearly as prevalent because I think Sub Rogue might possibly fall off. I think it's probably the best of the A, but again, this is much like Ellie. Frost could swing. I don't even randomly I think Frost has a higher probability of swinging down than it does up, but because it's just still so long and strong and it's lingering in my mind, it's hard for me to move it any lower than this. But I could definitely see this swinging down. Fury, I still kind of expect to be very similar to Arm's level of strength, and with nerfs to mages, that's really good to you, and nerfs to snares in general is really good to you. Havoc Demon Hunter is very happy about this patch. I'm going to probably throw you up on S tier. If this ends up being a sustained meta of dot classes, you always do really well in that environment. That's why it's important to consider all these variables. And if Subtlety Rogues can't one-shot you, and they definitely won't be able to stun you as frequently, but if they also can't one-shot you, there's not much really to contest your durability, and your damage output is still going to be remarkably good, and you're going to synergize really well with a lot of these casters. So I think Havoc stands a good chance of being very strong. Holy Priest, more burst-oriented healing, but it can do okay into dots with paramending bouncing. I kind of expect it to be maybe middle of the pack at best. Holy Paladin has been getting huge buffs. I could see Holy Paladin taking over. For now, I'm going to leave it on A+, but I could see this one swinging up. This is just a prediction, but it has been getting a lot of buffs. Marksman Hunter is surprisingly doing still very well, even despite a lot of the changes being oriented more so for Mythic Plus. I think obviously the return of Scattershot as a PvP talent is going to be nice for peeling melee off yourself, as we do expect there to be a lot of melee. But at the same time, Marks was good because it countered mages, and maybe mages are going to disappear. And if the food chain, right, if what you eat disappears, then all that's left is the stuff that eats you. I think that I'm probably going to go into like the A+. Its damage is just still really good. Seems like it still might be capable of one-shotting, but if it doesn't, then it could definitely swing down. Mistweaver Monk, again, you might do well because mages are gone, and you do well into hunters, and I think that's just going to be a lot of survival hunters. Survival hunters are getting a lot of good changes, so I think Mistweaver will probably end up feeling decently solid up towards the top end here. Outlaw Rogue, probably going to do well in a non-burst based meta, as it doesn't really have like a huge amount of burst. There's a decent amount of burst during Adrenaline Rush, but not like I wouldn't say it's the most notable kind of one-shot spec. So I think it might be the best rogue spec, but again, much like Feral, it's hard to pull off. It's either somewhere in here or somewhere in A+, I think, is where I would want to put it. I'm going to leave it a little more conservatively because I think it's possible that rogues fall off a bit on this patch. But it's still kind of wait and see, obviously, because no guarantees. Preservation Evoker, I think, is probably going to have a significant drop-off. It's having a lot of its mobility stripped away, especially in Battleground Blitz. I think it's still going to have decent throughput, but I am interested to see if it has weaknesses to getting like trained down and just like targeted the whole time. I do wonder. So I'm going a little bit more conservatively with this one on the rankings, a little lower on A, below like the Paladin and the Priest. I think it might struggle with getting attacked, but at the same time, main weakness for it was Subtlety Rogue getting Sunlock. Maybe that's not a thing. Might not be a thing. Prot Warrior, again, it's okay. It just doesn't really have I don't know, because the tanks again are so random depending on the tuning that they're doing for them and if they counteract the changes or not from PvE. Prop Paladin I still expect to be the best shuffle healer or shuffle tank. I say that because it basically works like a healer, but shuffle tank will still be the best, but BG Blitz it'll be the worst. So it kind of just depends on what content you're doing. I think it's probably still going to be the best tank. Resto Druid's I think going to be the best healer. It's just got really good throughput. It just keeps getting buffed. Has good damage output. I think it's really well rounded at the moment. Yeah, and it's still gonna have some stuns, especially if rogues disappear and stuns aren't as prevalent. You'll still be bringing stuns to the table. Retribution Paladin I think is still going to be basically the same as it is right now. So kind of just putting it in here with the warriors, maybe even a little higher than these guys. Just good off healing utility, solid sustain overall. Gets into dampening, goes immune to damage, runs people down. I don't think too much of it's going to be changing. Resto Shaman keeps getting buffed and buffed. I actually think Resto Shaman's getting into a much better spot. And you don't have to worry about getting one shot anymore because it's a healer that kind of struggles with that. You could do decent. This is like pretty high ranking, honestly, for Resto Shaman, putting it at the top of the A+ tier, just under Resto Druid. This one I might come to regret as far as a bold prediction. But I could see it doing really well, especially if caster dot classes pick up like Shadow Priest and Warlock, which is kind of anticipated. I think that it could do extremely well. In those situations, especially if there's not as many mages as well. Shadow Priest is another one where like I'm going more conservative. I could see this being an S tier, but I just kind of want to feel like I have too many up there already at this point. It could be an S tier. I think Affliction just has a bit better of a kit as far as control than Affliction or than Shadow has to put it all the way, but it definitely could be. Subtlety Rogue, again, just because Rogue is so good, like I can't really put it below A. I think that like maybe Assassin feels the best, and Outlaw then Sub or something like that. Outlaw Sub in that order. Could randomly swing very high still. Just really depends on the tuning. Depends on if maybe randomly there's any bugs, right? That we've seen some bugs that some abilities or tooltip says it increases your damage, but actually reduces your damage sometimes. So I don't kind of have to wait and see with this one. Could have a lot of volatility. Survival Hunter is one where I think it's going to be up here with Havoc. I think it's going to be really strong. It's getting huge reworks, Wildfire Bomb spamming. Likely going to be a lot of fun. You have Scatterback for more instant CC. I think it's going to be really good. Unholy, I think you got to be a bit worried because they're nerfing you so heavily for Mythic Plus without a huge amount of collateral. But at the same time, you do really well if it was a Warlock Shadow Priest meta. So I'm thinking like the lowest I could go is like I think you might be in here with Rogues, but you could be higher. Vengeance Demon Hunter, I think is the worst tank. You just have a lot of CC, but like no damage. That's basically it. CC and mobility with no damage was my experience with it. So it was just kind of meh. Windwalker, though, I think it's maybe the best of the A+ now, maybe close to S. The main thing that was keeping it down on previous tier lists, for example, the current season was defense, where they're buffing your defense up. But at the same time, if you can't completely one-shot somebody, I think it's going to be really good. I think if the game is slowed down a little bit, so you're not just like panicked all the game and running away, that's going to be really good. Again, this is a prediction tier list. This is me just anticipating some of the most significant changes that are being applied, and then what could happen to the specs that do well into those specs that are getting nerfed or buffed, and whether or not they're going to see a significant increase in performance or not. This is kind of just a 4 vibes prediction for fun. Like maybe if you log in on day one, like these guys are kind of the ones you might want to check out right away. Could be wrong though, so do note that week we're only going to be able to farm honor gear. We're also going to get more item level as the season goes on. We're going to unlock set bonuses, which could likely change the specs viability as well, as a lot of this, my experience of these specs is with 4 set bonus and full gear. Meta might be completely different with full honor gear and no set bonuses. So do not hold this against me. It's just my thoughts on where things could go based on how many years I've been playing this game and playing all these specializations. And I will update you guys as things move forward. So thank you guys very much for watching the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.